I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. My name is Barbara Chandler. I am the day-to-day manager of the Hannibal Square Heritage Center. And give me something, give me something. Yeah. And the coordinator of our 8th annual Juneteenth in historic Hannibal Square, remembering Rosewood. And I want you to give yourselves a round of applause for being here. I realize that right now we have several events happening in Central Florida, so in Orlando, so I do not take it for granted that you have chosen to be here. And I respect that, and I honor that, and I thank you for coming here to celebrate with us, and I encourage you to find other things throughout the weekend. Thank you for being here. We have a fantastic show for you. We have a fantastic show. We are here in honor. We are here in historical resilience. We are here for each and every one of us, peace building. I took that word from Miss Queen Lizzie, who you will be hearing from. But before we go on any further, we're going to have the invocation and the proclamation reading from Darryl Gray. Darryl Gray is a community ambassador. He sits with me on our seat, our table, the Leadership Lounge with WPRK, a partnership with Rollins, where we bring marginalized communities, grassroots leaders to the front, and we have them to share what we're doing. So with no further ado, Mr. Darryl Gray.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Barbara. So glad to be here. So glad to see you all here. The invocation is an invitation to contemplate, reflect on our forebearers, and as we, their descendants, to commemorate and to celebrate in a responsive, able way for you, now, then, and always forward. So as you are comfortable, let us reflect. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, it's you who's brought us thus far on this way. It's by your might that you've led us into the light. So keep us forever in your path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, oh God, where we've met you. Lest our hearts and our minds become drunk with the wine of this world, that we wouldn't forget you. So shadow beneath your hand. May we forever stand true to you, O God, and true to our native land. Ashe. Be it so. Amen. Amen. Proclamation. City of Winter Park Proclamation, Juneteenth, June 19, 2023. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, declaring the enslaved in the Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas, nearly 2.5 years later, on June 19, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger led troops to Galveston, Texas, to announce the end of the Civil War and the institution of slavery, and thousands of enslaved people in Texas were freed, making them the last to learn of their liberation. And whereas June 19 is the emancipation date of those who were suffering for freedom and has been celebrated for over 150 years, as the nation is still continuing for striving to advance policy that promote equity and the right historic wrongs, to right and correct historic wrongs, to secure justice and freedom for all. And whereas in 1980, Juneteenth became an official Texas holiday, and since then, 49 other states and the District of Columbia have also declared it as such, otherwise known as Emancipation Day. Congress declared Juneteenth a federal holiday in 2021. And whereas an elegy to Rosewood, a traveling exhibition in commemoration of the 100-year anniversary of the Rosewood Massacre, is currently on display at the Hannibal Square Heritage Center through August. And whereas Juneteenth will be celebrated in the city of Winter Park on Saturday, June 17, 2022, with an event at the Winter Park Community Center hosted by the Hannibal Square Heritage Center, Winter Park Library, and the city's Parks and Recreation Department. Now, therefore, I, Philip M. Anderson, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Winter Park in the state of Florida, do hereby proclaim Monday, June 19, 2023, as Juneteenth in Winter Park, Florida, and encourage all residents to enjoy the educational and cultural celebration and to become more aware of the significance of this celebration in African American history and in the heritage of our city. In witness thereof, I have here to set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Winter Park, Florida to be affixed this 14th day of June 2023. Philip M. Anderson, Mayor, Winter Park, Florida.
Thank you, Darrow. Thank you. Again, I saw some new people come in. We want to acknowledge you. We want to thank you for being here. Once again, we honor your time, and so we want to stay to program. Before we go any further, I definitely want to recognize some folks in the house. Philip M. Anderson, Mayor of Winter Park, stand up. Earlier, I did see State Representative Bruce Antoine. Is he in here? Okay, do we have any more state officials here? Okay, wonderful. I also want to acknowledge the partners that helped me bring this together. I do not do this on my own. I have a bunch of people calling. Barbara Hayden would like to be a part of it. You know me, of course, it's community. So, for the community partners that are in the room, I know we have, well, not really, they've come in. Please take your stand. If you have a vendor's table, if you have taken part in helping to bring this Juneteenth together, please stand up. Be acknowledged. Be acknowledged, be recognized. Bridging the Color Divide, stand up. K2, stand up. League of Women Voters, Asala, University Club, stand up. Who else is in here? League of Women Voters, the Beehive. We also have Advent Health. We also have the Junior League, Mary Daniels, Phyllis Moore, Creole School of Art. Don't be shy, because I'm not. All right. So, with no further ado, next on our program, sticking to the program, we have Nancy Ford, and Nancy Ford is going to bring us the Black National Anthem, and in your seats, Bridging the Color Divide, said Barbara, people are going to need the words. Everybody, get your words. If you don't have one, share with your neighbor, okay? With no further ado, Nancy Ford.
Good morning. Thank you. I didn't even have to ask you. Thank you so much. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony in the days when hope unborn and died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our Father sighed. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Y'all did all right for yourselves. Y'all did all right. Make some noise. It's Juneteenth, everyone. We are here to pay honor. We are here to bring joy. We are here to recognize. And usually this is where our chief historian, Farrellyn Livingston, would come and she would give us an overview or a brief history of Hannibal Square. This year, we have the City of Orlando's Poet Laureate, Sean. Welcome. Put your hands together for Sean. Sean has prepared a customized spoken word tribute in honor of Hannibal Square as a gift from Bridging the Color Divide and the Winter Park Club and the University Club of Winter Park. Sean, welcome. Welcome to the stage, brother.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, right? Yes. All right. Yeah, I want to thank Betsy Stewart, Ms. Farrellyn, and Ms. Mary Daniels, who kind of helped with the information for this poem that I'm going to perform for y'all. But I was a thought got triggered when I was hearing the proclamation about Juneteenth, when General Gordon Granger went in to read the enforcing the Emancipation Proclamation. The image behind him, which I feel is undertold, is that those were black soldiers behind him, right? And so I just love that image, right? Because General Gordon Granger reads the proclamation. This is what it sounds like. And then behind him, it's like, this is what it looks like. This is what freedom looks like on horseback, right? In uniform, right? And so I want to charge us in the spirit of Juneteenth. What does freedom look like for you, right? And keep that thought in your head, right? So anyway, this poem that I constructed, it's called Hannibal Square. And when I was developing it, and I'm just giving it a little context before I go into the piece. When I was developing it, I started to do a little research on Hannibal Barca, the actual soldier, military commander in Carthage back in the day. And I as I learned about that history, I was able to draw some parallels between that history and here at Hannibal Square. So I hope y'all enjoy it and give me some energy and I'll give it right back. Hannibal Barca, regarded as one of the greatest military commanders in history, a strategist, North African general. His namesake solidifies the pride here, history preserved in ancient coins with his face on the front, heads, and a war elephant on the back, tails. The tales told at the Hannibal Square Heritage Center will do the same. Gus Henderson, like Hannibal, led an army of black registered voters, like black soldiers across the rugged terrain, AKA railroad tracks, to vote so that Winter Park could incorporate into a town. When black landowners show up in high numbers, the goal numbers to seal the deal is reached. A victory under the conditions that Hannibal Square, where black folks live, dine, and sleep, be included in the town limits. Carthage, North Africa, where Hannibal reigned, controlled trade over the Mediterranean, an eventual conflict with a growing Roman Empire, and the rest is history. We don't remember Carthage the same way we do Rome. Lest a story be told, the preservation of evidence, like war elephants on the backs of coins, tales. The tales of black neighborhoods start sounding the same, but we celebrate the thriving and remember the contributions and surface the stories found sleeping in museums, yet awake within her descendants in business, in tech, in poetry, in arts. Frank R. Israel and Walter B. Simpson were the first black elected aldermen in town, what cities call commissioners. Israel Simpson Court on the west side is more than a shortcut to your next destination. Street names and monuments resemble ancient coins to prevent from being erased. Question: you know why these streets are considered safe? Because it's hard to speed over the bricks, roads paved with bricks laid by black hands, brick by brick. All roads lead to Rome. We roll, come on, we roll over the history daily. The history of Hannibal Square is foundational to the existence of Winter Park, and regardless of what happens, just thought you should know that we care. And Hannibal Barca taught me a lot about Hannibal Square.
If this does not inspire you and encourage you to do so once the fall begins, we don't do it in the summer. This should inspire you to take the tour. Thank you for knowing the history. We have a little something for you. You know us. We always got a little something for you. Thank you, Sean. How can they follow you? How can they follow you? It's on your flyer. That's right. It is on the flyer. One more round of applause, please. Wow. Again, that was a gift from Bridging the Color Divide. Bridging the Color Divide members and the University Club of Winter Park, please stand. This was their gift to the residents of Hannibal Square. This is what we call peace building. This is what peace building looks like. Community healing. So I know why you're here. I know exactly why you're here. How many of you, how did you receive the information? How did you hear about Juneteenth in historic Hannibal Square? From Valeda, okay. Social media? Email? Okay, so it's working, our processes are working. What about 94.5? Anyone? Okay, our processes are working. All right, so one of the most important things in order to make this happen, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of personnel. Florida Humanities, am I correct? United Arts, help me out, Orange County Cultural Arts, Florida Humanities, they were instrumental in making sure that the funds, contributions were made in order to have this event. So we definitely want to recognize them. Color Divide, the University Club of Winter Park, a lot of amazing partners. And we also want to mention that you are being recorded. This is live on WPRK. So if you don't want anybody to hear you, just... And also, Eric is here. This is also being videoed, okay? I don't believe anything is live. Anybody going live? Just so we acknowledge that? Okay, so nothing is live, but it is being recorded. So we are here, one of the communities that we have revisited through the Heritage Center, and always trying to connect these different African American communities is Rosewood, Florida. An elegy to Rosewood is on display at the Heritage Center, which if you have not seen, you will be able to see this afternoon, all the way up until, what are we in, July, August, okay? It will be on display. We are preparing for our guests. Valeda Fluellen will lead the conversation with historian Lizzie Jenkins and Dr. Alexander Cornelius from FIU. So at this time, if you can take your places. If you can take your places, Valeda, I think you're going to want this one, okay?
History is often overlooked, sometimes kicked aside, buried in our hearts, our minds, never to confide. Then history has no purpose, and like an old tossed shoe, it's of very little value to me or to you. But today, we are here to celebrate, to advocate, to appreciate the sacrifices that were made in our history. Happy Juneteenth. Today I have the pleasure of introducing these two ladies, and I will share with you their story as told to me. Miss Lizzie Robinson Jenkins, fondly referred to as Miss Lizzie, is an educator, an activist, and a prominent advocate for social justice and equality. Mrs. Jenkins and her husband John co-founded the Real Rosewood Foundation. As the foundation president, she has dedicated her life to ensuring that the true legacy of Rosewood is never forgotten. She is a native of Archer, Florida. Attended the Archer Negro High School, and after graduating in 1957 from Lincoln High School in Gainesville, she earned a degree in elementary education from Florida Memorial College, now the University of Miami. In 1978, she received her Master of Science degree from Nova University. Miss Lizzie was an educator in Alachua County Public Schools for 33 years. As the co-founder and president of the Real Rosewood Foundation, she dedicates her life to ensuring that the true legacy of Rosewood is never forgotten. Ms. Lizzie credits her mother, Teresa Brown Robinson, Rosewood historian, and aunt, is it Maholda? Maholda Gussie Brown Carrier, a Rosewood school teacher, for the courage to champion her life's journey. Her ancestors include a long line of historians, history makers, and storytellers. Miss Lizzie is undeniably a human bridge that connects her family and ours to Rosewood. Aside from researching, authenticating, and studying the truth of Rosewood history, she is known for her songs, poetry, videos, radio, newspapers, public speaking, YouTube, concerts, dance, documentaries, plays, and most recently, the outstanding exhibit, The Elegy of Rosewood, which had its grand opening at the Patricia and Philip Frost Art Museum located on the Florida International University campus in Miami, Florida. The Elegy of Rosewood is currently on display, as Barbara has mentioned, at the Hannibal Square Heritage Center. And we are proud to be the second location on its tour. Miss Lizzie is a graduate of Leadership Gainesville 48. She is currently enrolled in a Dale Carnegie class. She has her own Queen Lizzie podcast. She is a member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, a silver life memory of the NAACP, a life member of ACAAHS. What does that mean, Miss Lizzie? And you know, I researched and couldn't find it, but I'm sure you're doing a good job with it. Okay, this is your Equal Justice Institute affiliate for the Loudoun County area. Okay, well, oh, it's just such a beautiful, wonderful story. You lived it, I'm gonna. Okay, she is a member of another initial, AREA. Do you know what ACREA? It must. Oh, we got it. Okay, very good. So, her first literary work, Lizzie's Rosewood Race. She takes her readers on a journey of truth, liberation, and sincere forgiveness. She believes that she was predestined to be the voice of Rosewood. She resoundingly declares, "I will share facts without prejudice, so I can help increase the knowledge of those who are unaware. Silence is mute," she says. "And when we are silent, we all lose. History is who we are." That's a story that must be told. Our next guest does not have the years and the length of story Miss Lizzie has. But her short story is an impressive one. Dr. Alexander Cornelius earned her PhD in American history from Washington University, St. Louis, after completing her Master of Arts in American History at Purdue University, and a Bachelor of Arts in History at Hunter College, City University of New York. In 2006, Dr. Cornelius joined the Department of History and the African and African American Diaspora Studies program at Florida International University. In 2020, Dr. Alexander Cornelius became the director of the Center of Women's and Gender Studies of Florida International University, where she promotes research, programming, and curricular development in women's and gender studies. Dr. Cornelius is highly skilled at creating a learning environment in which students from diverse disciplines discover their shared cultural and intellectual interests and an overarching commitment to public service. I am honored to be in conversation, and we are privileged to have such a distinguished professor and scholar join us here at the Hannibal Square Center for the annual Juneteenth celebration. And we are equally as honored to have Rosewood's historian, Miss Lizzie Jenkins. And I would like to begin by asking each of the ladies, what is your Rosewood story? And I'm going to start with the youngest. I'm going to let the baby talk. And then we will hear from Ms. Liz.
Hi, greetings everyone. Hello? You want to take mine?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I just want to begin first by thanking Ms. Barbara Chandler for inviting me to be here today. It is my honor, it is my pleasure. This is a really very special place. It's my first time here in this area, but it won't be my last. I really just appreciate all of you coming here today. And the space itself is really something very phenomenal. In terms of my Rosewood story, I don't feel proper speaking before. I feel like Ms. Jenkins should speak first. If you don't mind, I'm in awe of this person. And so I'll follow her with my office.
Okay.
How wonderful and how it's made.
Yes. How wonderful and how respectful. And in Africa, they give the drummer some. We learn as we grow. Miss Lizzie, your Rosewood.
Thank you very much. My Rosewood story is 30+ years of detailed research. Never attack anyone, never blame anyone for what happened to Rosewood. Because Mom said, you didn't create Rosewood. I didn't create Rosewood. It's history. It's who we are. Keep it real. That's why the name of my foundation is The Real Rosewood Foundation. Everything I talk about, I have a supporting evidence to show you my research. But I want to go back to 2018. Got a call from a young lady by the name of Miss Barbara. Oh. Louder? Yeah. Okay. Do I need to repeat everything I'm saying? I don't have a problem with that. I love to talk. I have been mom, before she died, I said, Mom, I remember when I was born, and she would say to me, shut up. But anyway, Rosewood is very special to me because my aunt was Rosewood school teacher there. But, and I was saying, let me go back to Mrs. Barbara Chandler in 2018, I got a call from this exciting young lady that lives here where we are today and invited me to come to speak during your, was it Black History or Juneteenth event. And we have been friends ever since. Thank you very much for doing such an excellent job. And you look around in here today, well done. It was stormy out there. And I said when I walked in here, I am very, very pleased to see the crowd. I don't know where I started before, talking about Rosewood, but anyway, I know so much, and my story is never the same, but let me tell you that Rosewood, I think you said in my bio that I was ordained to tell the truth, be the torch bearer, and I want to know. When my mom gave me that assignment, I hated it, I was angry, I didn't want to do it, it was time consuming, and I said all of this to her, and she said, baby, if Mama was younger, Mama would do it, and I wanted to say to Mama, do it. Guilt, I was guilty, but and she used another guilt trip on me. Well, you are the teacher, you are the educator. I said, you are more educated than I am with an 8th grade education, 4 months a year. She was a genius. And when I tell you, genius, the smartest woman that ever walked the face of this earth. Her degree was equivalent to a PhD. Her sister was the school teacher. The reason my mom wanted so much for this story to be kept alive is because during the invasion by the KKK, my aunt was gang raped. I don't like talking about that because it's see, I just went blank. My mom said, keep it alive. People need to know that she was gang raped by the KKK that came there because of a lie that was told on my uncle. I didn't intend to get into this either, accusing him of being the young man who attacked Fannie Taylor. And which led to them having to leave Rosewood and come to Archer, her home. And she was never the same. For the next 25 years, she ran from I don't know why I brought that up about Rosewood. But anyway, it takes more than me just telling the story. It takes prayer. I pray all the time. I have been in some places, only white places, and every time I get to the door, get ready to knock on somebody's door, I say, Lord, take care of me. And I know it was all white. Wrightsville, where the train conductors were from, all white. I passed through Wrightsville going to a funeral one day. When I stop back through here, I'm going to stop and see where the Rices live because it was the Rice brothers who really drove the train conductors and helped the Rosewood people. And I did stop Mom and Pop's store, went in there 2 short white men, and I said to them, Lord help me. And I said, I'm from Archer, and I'm looking for Bryson. Do you know? Like, yes, they're right there in the house right back there. I'm sure they were. But everywhere I went, you know, I told you, I just said I prayed. God hears and heard my prayers. Everywhere I went, all the white, they were clean and nice. And I'm not just saying that because the majority of you white. The truth will set you free. I think because people are so kind, because they know and they feel my energy that I am real. I am real. I don't go there pretending I am not praying. But it took prayer, and my father would have said this to me. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No he would have said, this a charge to me. I have this wrong, C M R S M, of God to glorify. My mom said, precious Lord, take my baby's hand, lead her on, let her stand. She also wrote this song for me. Rosewood, Florida, borders Highway 24. A destroyed town, no blacks live there anymore. Where emptiness resides in the silent sacred breeze. Life there no more, only nature's moss hung trees. My mom also said to me, this verse is very important to her. The Cedar Key train conductors were told to pick up in Rosewood. Standing by the tracks with a lantern, this young school teacher stood, waiting in desperation to carry out the sheriff's plan. Rounding up the hit survivors to board the midnight train. That young lady that was standing at the tracks, that was her sister. Bob John Wright and his wife Mary Wright knew that she was going to have to be the leader to get those kids and the adults from his house where they had sheltered them until the sheriff was able to make a deal with the white Cedar Key men to help him relocate the blacks from Cedar Key safely out of town. He did a heck of a job. My mom loved Sheriff Bob Walker. And when I say love, respect, she said he worked 96 hours straight in an offer and an effort to get them out alive. He did, but not by himself, with the help of, I call them my unsung heroes that I never met. But they got on that train, they told him, Bob, if you take them out of here at early in the morning, like 4 a.m., we'll help. We can't put our family at risk, in jeopardy, by helping move black people out of Rosewood. Are you crazy? But they did come to his aid and help him. That was very important. And one more verse that says, it talks about Archer with her sister. And you know, Barbara, when I was here last month, I couldn't find this song any place. So this is another important verse too. The sheriff and the store owner worked around the clock, informed the train conductor just when and where to stop, pick up the men, women, and children who were hiding out, and bring them to Archer, Florida, traveling the same old route. In Archer, Florida was where my aunt disembarked and several other people. Okay, but the song goes on and on and on. Written by my mom, beautiful song, and it tells the story. But I'm not here to use your time by telling you just whatever. It's not an easy story to tell. I do lose my concentration. And when you listen to my podcast, you want to say, yep, she said she loses the concentration. But I tell you what, keep it real. I do sound just as good as those, what are those people called on television? News reporters. I sound better. I get so tired of the same stories over and over. I'm not going to talk about that. But anyway, I talk a lot. And you have my permission to stop me. Oh. See, I do. I was never going to stop me. But the earth unfolds as it should. And so now we shall hear from the baby. Whatever you say is never wrong. Okay, I'm serious. If you don't, just say it anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm turning 54 next week, which makes it even more wonderful for me to hear myself referred to as a baby. I would think that all day long. So my move to Rosewood, to your question, Probably, in a way, it began when I was 10 years old, in terms of how I first became exposed to African American history, which was through a book maybe many of you have heard of, Mildred Taylor's Lord of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And I bring that up just to, just quickly underscore the importance of having diverse representation at the early, in elementary and high schools in terms of our books, because it was just a book that I saw on the library shelf that ignited this lifelong action. And I say this also as a person of Caribbean descent. My mother is Haitian. My father was from Nevis, passed away. And what that book did for me was give me a great sense of appreciation for the sacrifices that African Americans in this country had made, that in addition to the sacrifices my own family and their ancestors made, that made it possible for me to take advantage of all the opportunities that eventually would come my way. So I just really want to say that, and say that explicitly. More immediately, I was very fortunate to have Amy Galveston, who was pulling together this exhibit, reach out to me and ask me if I wanted to participate in co-curating, in doing some of the curation for the exhibit. And of course, I jumped at the opportunity as a historian and lifelong person who appreciates this work. And you made mention of your mother as having the equivalent of a PhD, and I think that's absolutely correct. There's a book called Unexpected Places, Reimagining Black Intellectual History, as edited by Leslie Alexander, Brandon Bird, and Muscle Rickford. And it speaks specifically to this idea that African American intellectual history kind of moves beyond the traditional confines of a university or a classroom or even text, that we can find African American intellectual history in, for example, things like objects, things like quilts. And I noticed, I just again want to affirm the work that Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Chandler are doing to preserve this history, because it really is very critically important. In one of the essays in the book that I just mentioned, Alexis Pauline Gumbs, who is a poet, scholar, she has an essay titled The Black Possible, Scenes from an Intellectual History of the Past, Digital Future. And she talks about specifically the importance of the quilt making and the historical significance of it. And she writes, "That's why they made the quilts and raked the pieces and kissed them and stitched them. They knew how to circle the cloth that soaked up your sweat into a map to their ocean. They knew who was first and who would last. And they stitched, all the while singing songs that led the thread to know their name. They were physical metaphysicians. They wanted you to be warm enough to remember." And I think that captures beautifully also, not only the work of quilt making, which I understand, there's several exhibits here specific to quilt, but also to the work that Ms. Jenkins is doing and the work that Ms. Chandler is doing. It wasn't until, I had this early intellectual interest, is kind of like, I saw myself in the books that I was reading for the first time, but it wasn't until much later that I began to understand that the act of restoring this history and remembering this history is really an act of love. It's an act of, of preservation. It's an attempt to kind of make sure you capture knowledge that will be useful to the next generation. I think in terms of understanding the critical role and importance of objects, before I get to objects, in terms of preserving this, I have to also speak to what you said. One of the ways in which we are able to capture this knowledge and to reckon with the history that is really often very painful in terms of the African American experience, but also it's restorative, is through song. And we saw that already many times today through the song poetry of our poet laureate earlier today, Sean Welcome, and through Ms. Jenkins. And I think it's important to understand the role of song in preserving this history, because what song does is it allows us to capture the pain, but it repurposes it and gives it back to us in a way that's restorative. And we heard that today. We see this even in, I was reading the national anthem. The words are very heavy, right? So I was like, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Come to the place where our Father sighed. We have come over a wave that with tears had been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. And so this form of passing on the history doesn't forget what happened. It doesn't erase it. It doesn't even minimize it, right? When you spoke about what happened to your aunt, you have to tell it. But it allows us to share it in a way that doesn't bring us, that doesn't immobilize us. It's repurposed to inspire us. And I think you'll hear that over and over in the song. When Etta James is singing "At Last," it's like, what happened before? But right now she's there at last, right? So I'll stop there. Thank you.
I was thinking as you were talking how everything happens for a reason. There's no mistake in time. Time is designed for us to learn something. Like today, I'm saying, we had planned for you to go first. Why did I change it? I changed it because the lesson in it is respect. Respect for our elders, allowing them to tell their story. And I think that was sort of emphasized in my mistake. So I'm going to forgive myself. Forgive me. But whenever I make a mistake, I make a lot of them. I always think of what good came out of that horrible thing I did. And that's what I think I learned from it, is that we have to hear the elders. Now, Ms. Lizzie?
Yes.
There's a little bit of that song you sing, and she talks about the importance of song. So I want you to pull from another verse in that song and tell us the story behind it.
Okay, the purpose of the song, my mother the movie was done in 97. Okay. Anyway, no, yes, because she was still living, it was in 94. So, she saw the movie, and she didn't agree with all of what happened, but she loved John Singleton because he was brave enough to tackle, as she said, what man people were running away from. He brought Rosewood to life. And after the movie, Warner Brothers invited my mother to be the spokesperson to evaluate the movie after the free screen. I'm going to get the song. And she was 20 when it happened. And at the movie, she was 95. And he said, Mrs. Robinson, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the movie? She said, I give it a 7. I didn't know she knew what a scale was. But she said the two most important things, that movie let people know that Rosewood happened, and it let people know that white women lie on black men. And everybody in the theater was some kind of smart conversation. Because they didn't appreciate what she said. Mom put her hands on her 95-year-old hip. Not only did it happen then, it's still happening today. I like telling the truth, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but it's true. Keeping it real. So, In the movie, it also showed that Sheriff Bob Walker was not a decent man and lied on him. So this is a verse my mom put in there. The sheriff, I think I read that one. Yes, I did. You are so smart. She didn't want to hear it again. Oh, she's just smart here. Oh, okay. One of these PhDs. But this is what Mom had to say about the sheriff and the store owner. And please, at the very end, I want to tell you a real story about the sheriff and the book of some one of the guys that were killed in Walker and John Wright. But anyway, she said, Bob Walker and John Wright took on a daring risk. Put the survivors on the train, Lord, and sent them off with a kiss. Notified the Gainesville families to be on the lookout for their kin. Told them the train was coming and told them exactly when. Two white men, two more white men, conductors, John and William Bryce, headed on up the track, dropping off other survivors, not taking the time to look back, counting heads and making a list, doing what they knew they should, to report to Sheriff Bob Walker back down in Rosewood. My mom said Sheriff Bob Walker worked, I think I said 98 before, but 96 hours straight without rest, in order and an effort to get those people, the black people, out of Rosewood alive. Because Mom said to me many times, whether she knew it or not, she said, he knew those people. And see the key, one way in, one way out. See the key is a peninsula. And the only way out was by train. So he had to go to those train hubs, what are they called, depot hubs, and then negotiate with the train conductors, get these folks, my folks, out alive. So the train also went through, he dropped some off in Gainesville, then Waldo started, Lord T. Maxville, the train kept chugging along. Baldwin, Callahan, K-Town, Brightsville would soon become their home. Why? Because the Fannin Hill lie had ruined their lives, and the ancestors on it. They survived the story, didn't set too well, and they knew deep down within their hearts one day they would have a story to tell, and that's what I'm telling now. Their story, because they suffered. And when that train got to Briceville, the home of the Bryce brothers, the father John Bryce to the Bryce brother conductor, there were black people that didn't get off the train. Why? Because they were not from any of those places. They came to see the key years ago in the 1800s, enslaved, and they didn't own anything or knew anybody in Briceville. So when the train conductor got to Briceville and looked around and there were people on the train, now, what are we going to do with these folks? But their father, John, owned a sawmill and a timber company. He put them to work, plus he put them up in houses. That's why I was in Hilliard when I said I'm going to stop back through Briceville. On my way back, I stopped back and I looked up the Bryce family. And how many of you know that every white man was a KKK? Let me tell you why. They were too afraid not to. And one white man told me, I'm more afraid of the KKK than you are. If they did not, something happened to them. Now my confirming evidence is right here, I'm going to tell you that next. I went to this Bryce young lady's house, knocked on the door, scared and praying like I always said, I prayed. And I heard little footsteps coming to the door. This little kid got to the door, opened the door, and saw this black face smack that door. Then I heard the little footsteps going back down the hall. Then I heard an adult. She came to the door, opened the door, and I said, ma'am, my name, I'm scared, my heart. She said, ma'am, I said, ma'am, my name is Lizzie Jenkins, and I'm from Archer. But my aunt taught school in Rosewood, and your grandfather or your people, the Bryces, brought them to safety. She said, open that door and said, come on in. Where have you been? My mom died 5 years ago. She knew everything about Rosewood. I don't know anything. It was too painful for me to remember. She said, I don't remember a thing. Come on in. I have some pictures that I will share with you. And she gave me pictures, and she was the one to tell me that all white men were KKK. And she gave me a picture of them. I have that picture now. I'm scared to put it in the book, but I have a copy of it. And then her supporting evidence was they were afraid not to. She said, let me tell you, it was in 23, they brought the people from Rosewood. She said, but I want you to know one thing, in 1924, my grandfather and her uncle, his brother, were the two campaign conductors. She said, but in 1924, my grandfather was on riding his horse, and they spooked the horse and broke his neck, broke the grandfather's neck. She started crying. He heard it. Her mom had told her this story. Today we are good friends. And I have pictures, I have made contact with every white family because I want the truth. Okay, I'm not blaming anyone. The truth will set you free. I feel so good because my board is very diverse. People want to help. Why? Because they know Liz has done her research. They know I tell the truth, and they know I don't blame people because I don't want to, but I don't. I'm a big girl. But it's so painful. I want you to know I'm not perfect, but I try to be fair, and I'm very prayerful, okay? And my husband prays with me and for me. This job that I'm doing, y'all, it ain't easy. It's, when I get through telling my story many times, I go home, get in bed, feel a position to decompress. I spoke last night in Ocala, and I tired today. I am so tired. As I speak, it's not easy, but I enjoy it. Why? Because you enjoy hearing it. Okay? Because of my mom, you are listening to me. She was something else. When I tell people I lived through the Jim Crow era, they say, Liz, you're too young. No, I'm not. I lived through it with my parents in the 40s. I remember stepping off the sidewalk to allow people to pass. I remember sitting at the lunch counter in St. Augustine, Florida Memorial College, where Lift Every Voice and Sing, okay, was founded by the, what kind of brothers, who were they? James Weldon Johnson and his brother, see, I have a coaching team over here. Right? Florida Memorial, okay, my alma mater. And I sat at the lunch counter, but you know, I can hear my experience. It's not pleasant. I have never been so afraid in all the days of my life. And Dr. Robert Haley, just out of college, a dentist, crazy as hell, came from Jacksonville to St. Augustine and practiced on the Florida Memorial College student. He didn't know how to organize a sit-in. But we were his little practice team. And the day when I was supposed to go, I called my mom. And we had one telephone in the dormitory, and that was a payphone. And the kids heard me on the phone, and they heard my mom, you better not go down there and sit down at that lunch counter. Yes, ma'am. The minute they was, Robert said, hang up that phone, it's time for us to get out of here. You know, peers always had control over you, especially a little country girl like me. I hung the phone up, get out, it's your time. And there were the guys ready to take us down to the lunch counter. And I went there and saw all of these hoods and dogs and horses. Oh my God, my heart just stopped. So it was my time to sit at the counter. Y'all don't really hear what happened, do you? Yes. I sat there, okay, can y'all turn the recorders off? was so afraid, not only I, but other girls were too. And water was coming from somewhere, okay? And I slipped in the water. And when I did, I felt a boot, okay, in my mouth. Loose two of my teeth. They never did whatever. But anyway, eventually I had to have all of them extracted. Okay? Every time I brush my teeth, I go back and reflect on what happened. In 1960, I was a junior. Never told my parents I sat down at that counter. Never. But they got help from me. That same dentist, he made sure my mouth, he followed me to make sure my teeth were paid for. And I've been there, done that. Am I sorry? Yes, the one thing I'm sorry about in St. Augustine that happened at the lunch counter, I was not jailed. If I had been jailed, I would have had what? Supporting evidence. I had to pull up my record. But some of the kids were jailed. So, like I said, this has been a lifetime journey for me, telling the unpleasant history of a people. I'm tired. Now, I would like to talk about the silence surrounding the history of how and why racialized violence towards African Americans became inscribed in race relations in America. The erasure is magnified by the posture of silence involved in atrocities like Accordion and Rosewood, where many of the people involved dare not speak of it. But Lizzie's mom didn't stay silent. She talked about it, she passed the story to her children and to all who would listen. She immortalized it in a song. Let us talk about why people were silent.
So I think in terms of the silence, I think people were maybe silent is the one. The people were quiet, but not always silent. So Kevin Quashie is a graduate of FIU. He's a professor now at Brown University, and he has I read a lot. He has a book called The Sovereignty of Quiet, and he talks about quiet acts of resistance and the extent to which sometimes we don't see resistance unless it's performative. I really appreciate your recollection of your story of what happened, because I found that as a teacher of American history and African American history, one of the things I always have to do with my students is to convey to them the courage that it took to participate in sit-ins, because they have a sense that, especially I taught 7th and 8th graders, high school, at Phillips Academy in Andover, I taught at FIU, all over. And they see, nonviolent resistance as passive. And they say, oh, I would never have done that. I'm like, you don't understand what it took to participate in that. The Eyes on the Prize series has a small section in it where it shows the training that people had to undergo in order to participate in these sit-ins, because the body's natural reaction is to resist. And they had to be trained not only to not resist if they were attacked, because you didn't want that captured on video, right, on the news. But they had to be trained not to resist if someone else was sitting next to them and was being attacked. They couldn't come to the aid of people right next to them. And so, I think it's also true that that's again the importance of the objects that are left behind, because sometimes the objects tell the story. So for example, there's the cane in the exhibit. There's the cane in the exhibit. I believe it's your father's cane? Your grandfather's cane?
I just wrote this. Did you see this? Walking cane?
I did, no.
Okay, I've got to tell you about this walking cane that my grandfather, in the exhibit, carved himself in 1921 maybe-ish. But anyway, one day I was looking at the cane, examining it. My mother kept everything, carving copies of everything. And there was a niche, don't know if that's the right word, at the very right past the hook. And I said, Mom, what is this? She said, that's a sword in there. Sword? I said, well, I can't. I was trying to open it. I said, I can't open it. Why? She said, possibly dried blood. Well, listen at you. And I said, dried blood? I said, has Papa ever killed anyone? She said, without thinking, heroes do what heroes need to do when they need to do it. So that meant Papa probably killed somebody. But if he did, he was protecting his family, because I later, and I was too young to understand it, Daryl, and I later learned that not only Papa carried a walking cane, every black man carried a walking cane. So I'm wondering if every black man had a sword and they resisted. Because as I told you, Mom kept everything. As I continued to research, I saw men of worth, Archer Knight Riders, Archer Knights of Pythia. And I said, Mama, what Archer Knight Riders? She said, oh, the men rode at night to protect the parameters of their property while their families slept. Archer was something else. In Rosewood, developed these same symptoms. And when I say symptoms, I mean they were fighting and people did resist. Don't think they were pushovers, because when James Taylor told Sylvester Garrett he was coming to town to take care of Rosewood, he said, you got to bring it to get it. The people in Rosewood resisted. The reason it's quiet, they don't want people to know they got, they were met head on with a gun battle, and they kind of like lost. That's why we were quiet. They were quiet because they were too afraid to talk. But they knew if they did not fight back, they would have been killed. And the drunks, and when I say drunks, because when they couldn't find Aaron on the first night of looking for him, I'm skipping a lot, they went back to Sumner to their little hangout and made more moonshine, and they came back. Okay, but when they came back, they met the Rosewood men and the Levy County black men head on, because Sylvester had recruited them. And they didn't know that when you come into Rosewood, it was one way in and one way out, and you come down a rut road. How many of you know what a rut road is? A rut road. There was a road wherein the Model Ts would travel, and it would make a ditch. And only the car could travel that road, and there was no way out. So when they came down drunk in their little Model T, they couldn't turn around. So they had to run to get out. And yes, there was resistance. That's why they have worked so long to keep them silent. They don't keep us silent. Yes.
Why was it that they were interested in preserving body parts of?
I don't know. Can y'all hear me? I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's true, and I don't talk about it. Okay, I've heard it. I know exactly what you're saying. There is no proof. So I don't waste my time or talking about it, but I was about to say resist. Well, I became silent. I'm gonna come to me. Okay. But I
there were many massacres before Rosewood. The beginning with Fort Pillow, when the soldiers were massacred. And the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Bedford, was the soldier who allowed black soldiers, many of them the ones that Sean displayed, that were behind him, to be murdered. And then there's Rosewood, there's Tulsa, there's Elaine, Arkansas, Chicago, Illinois, 1999, and in Florida, two, between 1920 and 1923. Now, we know that in McCoy, it is said that it was the voting that caused that. Tell the story of the why the massacre in Rosewood. What precipitated the massacre?
A lie, and I think I've said it. Van Hill was having an affair with her white lover. Her husband went to work every morning to oil the machines at 4 a.m. He returned home. The breakfast was at 6 p.m. and on this particular morning when he returned home, because she and the white lover had a fight out at the OK Corral. She was left bruised, and she had to explain to her husband why. So, you know, the easiest the magical white lie, a black man did it. And she didn't use the word black man did it, she used the N, man did it. And guess what? My mom has written a poem that says, a N did it. It is so hilarious. You all are going to find all of this in my book, but Mama wrote the poem. But that's why many of the massacres happened. And you're talking about, there were lots of massacres that started in the 17th century. I was down at FIU in March, February, working with Dr. Mathie. Dr. Mathie is something else. If you don't know Dr. Mathie, you get to know Dr. Mathie. She is something else. She is the person who initialized the exhibit, the elegy to Rosewood, her brainchild. And it is not national now, it is international. And if you want to keep up with Rosewood, follow the elegy to Rosewood. And there are words, like I said, white massacre started in the 17th century. It's all on the bulletin board. It's still there at FIU. I came down, she said for me to come down all the way from Arches to sing my song at her opening. She loves my song. I love her. She is Malaysia. She is a guy going on. She does anything she can. And as we speak, she has a play, a professor who, law and order professor, was it actor, writing a play about Rosewood. Y'all keep up with us. You can follow us at rosewoodflorida.com. Oh, by the way, the most important thing on rosewoodflorida.com is that little button that says donate.
Our time is almost coming to an end, but I would like to pass the mic to RP.
The only thing I'll add to that, in terms of why these things happen, I think it's true. I think it's fair and true to say that culture wars become real wars. That when you have a culture that seeks to, or people in power that who seek to dehumanize or ostracize groups of people, that there are people who will follow that to its ultimate end. And we've seen that, and historically that's proven to be true. So we've seen that in reference to African Americans, in reference to Jewish people, in reference to LGBTQA population, Asian. Whenever there's an immigrant, and whenever there's like a anti-X hysteria or desire to target people and dehumanize them or deem them as being a problem to a society, this is the kind of thing that follows.
Well, one she is an intellectual. I am just down home country. Okay, that's why our conversation is so different. Statistics. I don't do the statistics, whatever that word is. Statistics. But I want you to know this. I know who I am. I know that my great-grandfather, Wesley Brown, was a slave owner. He married from Orangeburg, South Carolina. He married Eliza Bowman from Bowman, South Carolina. So what does that tell you? They had black and white families. He left there, and he walked them from South Carolina to Florida. We know it, and had to fight off other known slave owners, keep them from capturing his black, because the other slave owners couldn't understand why he had black slave owners. I mean, black people in his group, those were family members. We don't know who we are, but I know who I am, and you know I told you I wanted to tell you one last thing about Cheryl Walker, Polly Wilkerson, and John Wright. On my family tree, I found Henry McIntyre. I'm almost through, but this is very important. I found Henry McIntyre, my great-great-grandfather, age 1, 1848, Cedar Key. Came home to her mom. No parents. How can a baby have no parents? There is a good friend of mine. I gave her the assignment to look up my McIntyre, my paternal side. And she's been doing that. So last week she called me, she said, Liz, you know, everything you ever told me that your mom said is so true. I even found that your great-great-grandfather was a breeder, just like you told me. She said, I found that. But she said, let me tell you something else. Henry McIntyre, which is my great-great-grandfather, a lady lived with them by the name of Dilla Love. She was either your great-great-grandfather or your mother that lived with them. You know how old people live with? Okay. And she said, Dilla Love was either the mother of one of them. But she said, let me tell you something else about Dilla Love. I found Dilla Love on the census, and she is the real mother to John Wright. John Wright, the steel merchant, the real mom. It's not going to be difficult for us to report that. And she said, not only, she said, but Sheriff Walker was related to John Wright. Even the man that killed Wilkerson was related to you too. It's so funny. That's why I don't worry about people. But they are related, and the people don't even know it. So sometimes when the white folks fight against us, they don't want people to know who they are. Hey, I got you. I know who you are. It doesn't bother me. And I never asked you to stick with them. Over for that kind of stuff. What? Yeah. It's far. And I found out when something sent me the first sample, and I opened up my genealogy, and I saw all of those white people, my people. I closed my book, and I don't have time to do it right now. That's who I am. That is my truth. And one last thing. You're going to have to bring me back. How many of you in here know Steve Spurrier? Football player in Gainesville. Steve Spurrier is my friend. I interviewed him on my podcast on YouTube. So go to my podcast, okay? And see what Steve had to say about me.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to open the floor for questions. Okay. I'd like to open the floor for any questions that the audience might have. One or two? No questions?
There's one right here. We have one.
Thank you, Ms. Lizzie. Thank you, Vlada. Thank you, Dr. Cornelius, for sharing your wisdom, your stories, your grace. I feel entirely enriched by this conversation today. It occurs to me, Ms. Lizzie, that from Rosewood to the United States federal government to CARICOM to the United Nations, there's a global movement for reparations that is continuing, some might even say strengthening. I'm curious to know from your perspective as a descendant of Rosewood, what's your opinion of the modern day movement for reparations?
I think it's necessary. I think reparation is necessary for everybody, especially the black people, because in Africa, the university where the Romans and the other people went and got their education, and they kind of like reversed, may not be the right word, started the infiltration of our history. But anyway, you asked about reparation. Rosewood was the only asset that was given reparation. Very small. My family of 10 received $20,000 together. But the most important thing, they acknowledge their wrong. They need to write it. We have money here in America to send out of the country, taking care of other people, and we have people here don't have a place to live. It's ridiculous. Sick and tired of the politics in human lives. It's not fair. And not only the blacks should be compensated, people. It's awful to see these people begging for money on the street. And that's my goal. One day I'm going to get on the street and I'm going to get my sign and I'm going to see if anybody will give me money just for the experience. I like doing it. I probably did not answer your question, but that's how I feel about reparation. It is needed money.
You know that the movie Rosewood did come out in 1994, she said, and I'd just like to read to you what John Singleton said about having done that. At the time of the release, he said, "People say it's violent. I don't think so. And certainly not as violent as it was being there. I wanted to make you feel you were there. But then maybe Americans are afraid of it because of their own racial problems. They're all," I can't say the word, over-raced, you know. In retrospect, he said, "It wasn't one of my more successful pictures, box office-wise, but I think it's one of the best I've ever done." The same weekend it was released, Booty Call came out. I think more black people were comfortable watching Booty Call than that weekend than Rosewood, which is a shame. I feel the more we embrace our history, the better we can defend against being oppressed in our present.
Charlie William. Barbara, thank you, belated panel. Just a point of information, some good news. Yesterday in Tallahassee, the community of Royal in Sumter County was approved to go forward for an application with the National Park Service for rural historic designation. Tracing our history, this would mean that the farming community of Royal, which goes back 8 generations, would be one of the first in the nation to be designated National Rural Historic Designation. Great news.
Huge, huge.
Is there any planning for rebuilding Rosewood or?
It's called, now let me tell you about the state, what is it, Trust for Land Trust for Land. Gave me my foundation, a couple of 3 months ago, $480,000. It sat on the governor's desk ever since he's been here. But anyway, he finally signed it. Thank you, Governor Sanders. And no, you will not ban Black history.
Oh, okay. No, I thank you all again, and Miss Lizzie, you're just such an inspiration. I can sit at your feet and listen to you all day talk. But what I wanted to say, it was like in reference to when the movie came out, Rosewood, and of course, the Buddha Call movie, people who went to see that versus Rosewood. I think what I can speak to in that is, and especially coming from being born in the 50s, is that it's painful. As you indicated, it's painful to tell the story. It's painful to watch the stories. And even though you didn't live them, it's painful. And for me, I tend to not watch because it's painful.
I agree, it is very, very painful. I cry often. I read and I cry. But when I cry, I get spent. And I know people like you all want to hear it. May I ask I'm going to ask a question now. Raise your hand, talking to whites only. Remember, blacks only? Whites only. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if I offended you today with my storytelling. I knew I was good. Can I ask a white-only question? I'd like to ask a white-only question.
How many of you know that you have descendants who were slave owners? Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate your sharing that.
To go into the next exercise, and so everyone can just remain seated. One more comment there, make it brief.
Yes, briefly, I just wanted to echo your comment. I'm also a child of the 50s. Yesterday was my birthday. And, but the mutual release deliberately was a distraction, I believe, from the system to keep us in pain and ignorance, because they know that we have the appetite for the entertainment and not the education.
And on that note, I can't refuse you.
So in reference to, how do we teach beyond the pain? Sorry. I think, when you talked about like the different ways in which people pass on knowledge. So my father, for example, in the spirit of Father's Day, taught me how to defend myself. We would play in the backyard with my brothers, and he would say, well, what if someone came at you this way? But I didn't understand what he was really teaching me, but he taught me in case someone attacked me one day. He made it a game with my brothers and me. And in the exhibit, there's the bank book, I think. My father also had me do pay all the bills in the household, so I would understand the economy of a household. you know? And then, so in terms of like, how do I think we should be mindful of how we teach the next generation. Because no one uses those things anymore, like but you know, we have a really distant relationship to our money, right? And that may be fine for us, but what are we teaching the next generation about money and saving and paying bills and, you know, all they do is they just flash a card or flash a phone and, you know, so we have to be mindful, not necessarily that we have to stick to the old ways, but we have to be mindful of what's lost when we change things and how to move forward and keep teaching those lessons.
Okay. All righty.